Welcome to an assembly instructions video for the stove kit for the McKinley Kitchen set. There's 3. This is unit A, the stove unit, and this is the first prototype picture right here. It looks fabulous. The second prototype is the one I'm building here today, and it's not going to look as fabulous because it was just not working with me today. Nothing was working for me today. If you notice, the letters on my keyboard are inverted. It's because I had to flip this because I actually built this with the back upside down. So I had to flip it so that it will look the way it's supposed to look as you're building your kit and you follow along if that's the way you're doing this. But my lovely day started by diluting some extra thick glue, and I over diluted it, and so my glue wasn't sticking. But thanks to editing, you won't see the struggle of making everything actually glue. So I do recommend you have good sticky wood glue to do this. Some clamps. I actually used some sewing clamps right here, but you need some bigger ones too, some masking tape to hold things in place. Now there are 4 of these L-shaped partition pieces, and you want to glue them onto the lines that are etched into the back of this piece at a nice 90-degree angle. So you can use something that is a right angle that you can lean it up against in order to get that, but you want to try and do that. So here is another line of my ineffective glue, and there you go. And you're going to put that in. And for some reason, I missed gluing in on the 4th one, which is on the very outer edge of that back piece. Now, these are tiny hooks, and even though it's plywood, which is fairly strong, I still recommend you just do a little touch of glue on them to fortify them and let that dry while you're working on this. So now you want to install the countertop piece, which is going to bring the cabinet together, also help align your pieces. And you want to glue them in. I didn't, and then I had to do it kind of like this. But you want to glue first and then put it in. And that will align everything. And you want to make sure that you have masking tape so that you get some nice sharp corners and everything is where it ought to be. So there you go. Push them in. I'm going to get my masking tape and just tighten that all together, put these things where they belong. Whoops. And there you go. Now, I recommend you sand off all of the sooty edges. I'm just building this as is without sanding much of anything because, I don't know, I just wanted to build this. Today it's just not my day. And as you can see here, I cut these pieces and forgot to use the air assist on my laser, so everything is all charred looking. So that's another thing that just didn't go right for me today. So you want to take the floor of the oven box and you want to glue that in on the very edge, flush with the opening. Now you don't want it to be above the opening. You want it to be flush with the edge of the opening. And now you're going to take your 2 pieces and you're going to put the thicker bottoms on the bottom, and you're going to glue your little drawer boxes onto the little encasements. And I'm trying a different glue here, but I put a bunch of glue in these bottles, and some of them are not compatible with these little tiny nozzle bottles. So I was checking to make sure this wasn't E6000 because it was coming out like, is it E6000 or D6000? I don't know. Anyway, you want to make sure that these are flush with the openings, edge of each opening. You don't want any edges protruding that would interfere with the drawer going into the aperture because the drawer is measured to fit that aperture. So make sure those edges are just flush. Don't worry about them being a little bit crooked right now, because once you insert them in the cabinet, you can adjust them. Oops. Sorry, I just dropped my phone. You can adjust them as needed once they're in there, and they will actually stay in there because they're wedged, so they'll stay in place. But for now, just get them to affix to the front part of the cabinet. And then you want to put those aside to dry. Now I also tore the face of this out of the sheet a little bit too much, and I actually broke off a little piece of the surface of this thing. So now these are the drawer boxes. Pretty easy to assemble. I sped this up. There are 6 of them. So the best way to do it is to do a little U shape on the bottom piece and then do a side and the back together. And they'll hold each other up. Use a decent amount of glue. That helps too. And then I'm just adjusting to make sure that they are flush with the edge of the bottoms. Pretty simple. Probably the most complicated part of this build. Just wait till you get to Unit 2. I'm still in design mode on that one and I'm already exhausted. But people want the spice drawers and there are 15 of them. So I haven't even begun to get close to the assembly instructions yet. I still have to write the instructions for these, for this piece right here, for this unit. So and that means illustrating too. I don't know. Maybe I'll take pictures or screenshots from this assembly video. But here you go. I'm doing all of the drawers. I've got this one and one more to do. And I know I don't really need to show you all 6, but whatever. So one more. And I'm doing the little back bead of glue. Boom. And there you go. And I use my tweezers to do like little adjustments. It helps a lot because then your fingers are kind of clumsy and everything sticks to them. Don't put the tops on yet, on the fronts on the drawer yet. You want to wait and let those boxes dry before you do that. So now that this is moderately dry, you're going to take these pieces with the little hole nut in there and you're going to put in this little pin hinge into the hole. Be very careful. Even though it is plywood, it is still really delicate. So just kind of work them in there and kind of get them parallel, and then you can push them in once they're kind of seated or planted in there. And you're going to take this sides and you're going to push it into the opening. Now the stove is backwards from the picture. As I said, I did some bad things today, and I built this thing with the wrong side going. So the stove is going to be flipped, and you'll see that when you look at the introductory pictures again. And my assembly instructions, the written ones, will have it correct, and the picture on the box will be correct. So I apologize, but I just don't want to do it all over again. Because I just had such a bad time of it today. I don't know why. Nothing was working for me today. I don't know. So I'm using these little clamps to kind of hold the sides open and make sure that they are glued to the edge. I want to make sure that the little edge of those sides are also flush with the front panel, or the front face, completely flush. The only thing that should be sticking out are the little hinge holes. So there you go. And I secured it with more glue. Now that these have dried a little bit, let's start installing them. And so you put glue on the back and just kind of slide them in. Try to be careful and slide them in. And then you just make sure the face is completely set into the cabinet box. And I forgot to glue it, of course. So here I am adjusting, making sure these are at 45 degrees. It worked best to do it with adjust it with my tweezers. Finger again, it's hard to be delicate when you're just, jamming a finger in this big drawer box. So that didn't sound good. Let's just move on from that. So now I am gluing post installation. Not a good plan. I will do it right on the other side. But so far so good. Doesn't look like the floors are interfering. You want a nice straight, right angles on there so that your drawers will fit in. If you hear weird noises, my son is playing Xbox and he is making strange noises and yelling and stuff. And he doesn't hear me if I yell at him because he has his headphones on. So here I am actually gluing as I ought to be. And there you go. I just really need to take a nap. I think that's what my problem is. So you want to I didn't sleep too well last night. Maybe that's why I'm just having kind of an off day. So there you go. Now, yes, you can see that piece is bending out a little bit, but the stove will push it back where it belongs. So I see I'm using the tweezers to adjust the drawer boxes to make sure they are straight. And here you go. So I'm just using this to kind of hold that in place while they dry. So here is the ceiling skirting, as I call it. I don't know what this was called. It's basically a transition between your built-in unit and the ceiling. Now, I actually painted pastoral scenes on these on my original. You want to install this so that there is just a little bit of the edge visible on the corner side. Does that make sense? So on this side where I'm putting the rounded shelf, you can see there's still some exposed vertical partition, and that's important because you're going to need that to glue on the rest of the skirting. So now this is the meat hanging option. If you don't like this, you can hide this piece or not use this shelf, not use the hooks, and you can just do shelves all the way up and down the curved shelf portion. But this is a meat hanging unit, so I am putting in hooks so that you can hang some little hams and sausages into this little pantry storage area. So I am installing the hooks that I previously fortified with a little bit of glue. I'm using my tweezers to carefully push them into the little hole. I also used my tweezers to expand the hole a little bit to just widen it. But just be really careful because they're tiny and they can break easy. If worst comes to worst, you can always just use one of those little miniature eyelet screw thingies that you can put in there. But I think these work fine as long as they're carefully installed. And then I'm just going to put a dab of glue on the other side once I'm done installing these. But you see I'm widening the hole, boring it out a little bit more. Excuse me. And I'm putting a little more glue in there. So these will work with hanging hams. It looks pretty cute. I will post a picture of one of it with some meat hanging on there so you can see. But that is for those of you who want that option. Otherwise, you don't have to use the shelf or the hooks. You can just, I'm going to throw in some extra of these little pie wedge shelves and some extra regular shelves so you can configure them any way you please. You can see that on this assembly, I'm going to do something different with the shelves that I did on the original pictures opening up this video. Okay, so now it's time to install the stove, and I actually forgot to take off the masking tape. I can probably take it off later, but I am now putting it into its little berth in there, and I am gluing the back. The bottom is open, so I can rip that piece of masking tape out at any time. I just forgot. And of course, I wasn't thinking, so I forgot a couple of steps. And I'm also re-gluing where it's kind of not. There you go. So I am clamping that in place, making sure it's a nice tight fit. And I'm going to add some trim now while I'm waiting. So I'm using a pin to make sure that these holes are nice and clear. I haven't figured out the hardware yet completely for this, so the kit will include hardware. You can use your own, of course, but I am going to provide my own hardware options. I just haven't quite figured out yet what I'm going to do. I have some ideas. So I'm just making sure the holes are aligned by poking this pin through. There you go. And now I'm going to align this little piece right here. Also optional if you don't want to use it. I'm putting it in nice and crookedly. There you go. Now all of these pieces are meant to be sanded down. You can probably use a soft sponge sander to kind of get a rounded edge on here. And this little sun design, these are fairly deep cuts. They're not like superficial. So that hopefully they show through as a texture in your when you paint things. I recommend there is a paint out there that is iron infused, and it looks amazing on these little stoves. Now here I'm arranging this little piece of trim so that there's a tiny little edge visible from the interior. And of course, oops, I should have put this on before I put the stove in, but this is the little piece of glass. And usually I soot these up. So I put black paint on my fingers, and I will sort of dab my finger on the glass, and then it's covered in soot. Now don't throw away the little circle that that is included with this, and we're going to use that. But this is the pipe container I'm putting on the, I guess, backsplash or whatever. Now this is all, again, the stove is actually backwards in this video. It will be the other way. Now you want to put right up against the bottom of the cooktop. You want to put the trim on. This looks so pretty once it's painted. I'm going to paint this and show you guys, but not with this video. And here's the little circle that I used taking out from the pipe piece. And you want to glue that in. It's just a little stop to keep your oven door from going into the oven box. And then this last piece of trim, just throw that on there. Make sure your door clears it, and voila. So that stove turned out pretty darn cute. I love the detail on it, and when it's painted, it's going to be amazing. So now let's put the fronts on the drawer boxes. Now, how you put these on is up to you, as long as you do it consistently. So I just decided to kind of center it all the way around, but you can put the bottom flush or the top flush. As long as you do them all the same, then they'll look the same on the cabinets. But I like it best when they're centered on there. There's I think 1/32 inch clearance all around it. So, I mean, it's tiny, but it's enough to keep the drawers from, going into the drawer aperture. And these drawers will have hardware as well. Excuse me. So glue these on. You want to let them dry thoroughly before you mess with them. You don't want to put them in there and then have the little drawer fronts fall off. But arrange each one consistently. You might need to sand some here and there to make them fit perfectly, because sometimes the heat of the laser will warp your wood a little bit and make it not fit as precisely as it needs to. So you might need to sand edges here and there. Okay, so here I am demonstrating that I screwed up and did the back backwards or upside down. But in this case now, it looks like my original is wrong, but it's actually this one. So, shh, don't tell anybody. Okay. Okay, here's a special piece right here. This is pure basswood. Everything else is basswood ply, which is actually much stronger. But this one only has the grains running in one direction, which means I can bend it. So I wet it down a little bit, and now I am going to liberally squooge on the glue. Put it on this edge here. There you go. My neighbor is running a car that is so loud right now. I hope you guys can't hear it. You can probably hear my kid yelling, though, and making zombie noises and all those things. What are you going to do? All right, so some of this weak-ass masking tape, and I'm going to pop this edge to butt them together and push that in. Okay, there you go. Whoop. That's better. And just make sure it's nice and flush with everything. Okay, now we can pop the drawers in the drawer boxes. That one was a little tight. That one's better. You might need to sand them to get them to fit, and that's okay. I made the tolerances pretty darn tight, so, if there's a little bit of an edge on one of your drawer boxes poking in, you need to sand it down to make it fit. All right, so shelves. Now in this case, I decided to do 1¼ inches instead of just an inch, and using the regular shelves as spacers. So I just cut this little piece of wood here, this little spare piece, and made a spacer with it so I could get the right height. And as you can see, as usual, I'm struggling. But I'll make it work. But I wanted more space on this just to show that, you know, if you need more space to store your little dollhouse utensils or cooking pots or any of those sorts of things, that you can adjust these shelves to any height and serve any purpose that you need it to. You can have it uneven, or you can have it be continuous and symmetrical like I am doing. I like that continuous line on each side sort of going across the stove area. So I'm only doing the 1¼ on the lowest shelves because I did inch on my original, and it's not enough room for my little pot of utensils. So whatever you have in your little dollhouse kitchen, you want to make sure your shelves are there to accommodate it. Mine are full of stoneware bowls and plates and little mugs and all sorts of things. And so I'm sure you're going to want to fill these shelves with lots of things. So make sure you put them in a way that can be loaded with all of these different items of yours. So I'm using the shelves as spacers, and I shouldn't be just pulling them out right away. But again, don't be like me. Don't be impatient. Be meticulous. Take your time. This will make the kit even cuter. So yeah, there you go. But this is just a demonstration kit. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it when I'm done. Maybe I'll throw it up on eBay or something, and somebody can just have it assembled and imperfect. Now this piece right here, you need to make sure it fits before you glue it in. And because, you know, you're going to have variances by a millimeter or two. And if it doesn't fit, it's weak in the center, so it could snap pretty easily. So just make sure that it fits. If it doesn't, sand down the bottom, the edges, and make sure that that it fits before you glue it in. And I like that continuous line. I think that looks cool. So I'm adding in another shelf using shelves as spacers. There you go. Lots of storage for your little bowls, mixing bowls, cooking implements. And then also you could hang pots and pans from the stove area and hang your utensils from the shelf. You can put like little tiny nails on the edge of your shelf and hang your utensils from there. It'd be pretty cute. So I skipped a whole part where I broke the second curved shelf. And I'm covering that with the stovepipe because I just didn't sand it down, and I tried to jam it in there, and because it's weak, it broke. So sand down the edges, make sure they fit. And now I'm adding in the bottom of the meat hanging cupboard here. Another one of these little pie-shaped things, and I'm keeping that line continuous. It looks a little crooked, but there's a gap on the second curve. The pipe, you know, the stovepipe shelf, there's a little bit of a gap because I didn't sand. So shame on me. But this is for the purpose of assembling, and I really am not for the purpose of perfection. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. So I'm just putting in my little pie wedge shelves. I'm lining them up with the counter, with other shelves. Again, you'll have plenty of extras. You can do whatever the hell you want, whatever configuration you want. If you have wine bottles you want to store on it and you need a taller shelf, you do that. I'm using this bottom one, a second one, as a spacer so that there's a little bit of a space underneath the bottom of this bottom shelf. And then I just pulled it out as soon as I put it in. And then here's the last of these shelves. There you go. So this is the unit, and those are the extra shelves you get with it. And here it is with the meat hanging option. Look how cute that is. And yeah, the little teapot. And once it's painted, It's going to be fabulous. I will post a video of it painted when I have taken the time to do it. Find the iron infused paint for your stove. You will not regret it.